developed for sound land management legislation. A lot of it is premised on cooperative approaches, not on regulation in the form that always attracts this immediate opposition from the farm lobby. So you're absolutely right to highlight the problem, but there is now a growing experience of finding ways to overcome that by seeking collaboration, consultation, and engagement with the farm community in the solutions and bringing along the laggards as a part of that process, I think.
Maybe to shift the perspective from blockage coming from farmers to blockage coming from governments as well, because there are blockage coming from governments. And some governments do have different concerns. Some of them are concerned about implications, budgetary implications, or even, may I say, interest in regional or sub-regional context regarding issues that may arise from such global instrument on soil. So what we need to put forward here is that if it is about increasing cooperation for common purposes and common interests, when, for instance, developed countries are rather reluctant of being involved in such instrument because they are concerned that this may increase their responsibilities towards developing countries. We could also put forward the interest of securing a common capital that we have, actually. When you think that, for instance, in Europe, up to, if I'm not mistaken, 60% of the soil use of in Europe for Europe consumption is coming from abroad, the European Union. This is bringing some concern regarding sustainability of supply, including also therefore responsibility. So we might find different way of promoting the instrument.
Other questions or comments?
I've heard something about the farmers, and it's true, it's a very important lobby in Latin America also. But then again, there are so many things to look at. For example, you know that we have this ongoing discussion on GMOs, for example. On one hand, we don't want to extend the agricultural frontier, but we need but we have the problem that we need to produce more food. How do you think all these different scenarios can kind of give an answer to them, while, of course, conserving biodiversity, soil conservation? Do you think there's a way to address these things? And actually, this thing about food security in many countries is almost an ideological posture. So what do you think will be the next steps, or which has to be the answer from the conservation community to all of these different things that are being discussed nowadays?
Well, let me venture on this one, and I'm quite sure you will rescue me. Personally, I don't think the instrument is to promote solution, but rather to put forward imperatives and probably promote also targets. And one of the things that we need to consider is to preserve against degradation and to restore the degraded land. But the solution will be at the level of national level or even local level or community level. So if the instrument is not promoting any solution, being GMO or being non-GMO, I don't believe that this should be an issue. Yes, there are many ideological stand in that regard. But again, if we consider the common interest that we have in preserving a very critical capital, natural capital, that is actually too often out of our sight when we plan and when we invest. If we put it as a common capital, that might be a way to proceed. And I don't believe that the instrument should promote solutions, but rather maybe bring us together to agree on goals and hopefully targets.
I think that the question of targets is a really important one. If we look at, for example, what is happening with the IEG targets for protected areas, where there are very specific percentages of land and sea which are supposed to come into the protected areas estate on a global basis, the same argument applies to soil. It applies to soil both within dry lands as well as, in my view, more generally, but focusing on dry lands in particular, to actually achieve zero net land degradation by 2030 is a specific target and is starting to be recognised as a new sustainable development goal. The question for us then is how best to actually encourage the achievement of that target through legal mechanisms as well as policy and economic mechanisms. And that's something that it seems to me we really need to discuss much more seriously, both at an intergovernmental level as well as through the IECN community.
I think that there's actually a bit of a link between the two questions that have been asked in relation to the prominence of the voice of farmers and the leadership of farmers themselves. A lot of us here are scientists. I tend to work more with farmers than scientists, and scientists consult farmers rather than the other way around. Scientists are often the ones in the driving seat making decisions and then trying to persuade farmers to come along. That, of course, is points to the solutions in relation to the first question and getting farmers to be much more active in proposing solutions that are palatable to them. But in relation to your question, I think that most of my work has been done in Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, where a lot of the solutions to food security also come from farmers. But the solutions are not found because the farmers are marginalised. And so agricultural intensification is led by scientists, and they make the wrong decisions regularly, and they're not improving food production. They're having more costs than they are benefits. And so I think really getting farmers right in the forefront and getting them to lead the discussions is absolutely crucial.
Yes.
My name's Rob Blake. I work for a Korean biodiversity organisation, government organisation. Well, I'm a soil ecologist. For 30 years I've studied soil ecology. Specifically I work on earthworms. And I think it's a fantastic presentation, some very good points. I think soil is the key for the planet. There's so many issues that are interlinked, key issues. I won't talk about all of them at the moment, but specifically to that question, I think farmers realise they depend on the soil, and they're very concerned about the quality of the soil. And they have to take advice from government advisors or from representatives of companies, fertiliser companies. And a lot of the advice they're given is from scientists who work for organisations that are sponsored by industry. And so we get things like biochar, which I think is probably another pollutant. I think it's a diversion. It's a spurious sidetrack. But I'll get to my point. The government advisors say GMO, use this fertiliser, this herbicide. And in the pollutants, you didn't mention fertilisers and pesticides and herbicides, which I think are the pollutants. There is the main pollutants, and they're broad spread. And the biggest one will be GMO. It's an uncontrolled experiment that no one has requested and hasn't delivered any of its promises. But the point I'd like to get to is a difficult question for me, is that why is there no research for organic farming? I think about 1%. And CSRO, for example, specifically avoids anything organic. But in the USDA, there's about 1% goes towards organic farming. At the same time, why is there no... every country has a marine biology research station. And the ocean's not important for food supply. It's about 0.6% of total food supply. It's not diverse. They have about 10% of global biodiversity in the oceans. We know nothing about the soil. I find new species every time I go out to the field. There's new species here, everywhere I go. These are earthworms, large species. We're so ignorant of basic biology. My question, why do you think there's no dedicated soil ecology institute anywhere in the world? And this doesn't mean chemical or GMO genetic institute or microbiology. I'm talking about soil organisms. as Darwin told us, that keep the soil viable. They give us soil moisture, extra soil moisture. They give us temperature amelioration. They give us carbon sequestration. They give us fertile, healthy plants, and so on. And there's not one soil institute. So that is my question. Maybe Ian or Luke could answer that, but I just wanted to focus particularly on a couple of points you made in relation to fertilizers, pesticides, and the encouragement of organic farming. There's no reason why in either a protocol or a convention these things can be much more specifically covered. And in the protocol as it presently exists in draft form, we actually have a mention of existing or potentially threatening processes. Clearly fertilizers and pesticides are an issue there. In relation to biodynamic farming, you might be aware that biodynamic farming has worked, in Australia at least, a movement has worked to encourage the use of biodynamic farming because of the experiments that have been made in the last couple of years and are ongoing in relation to showing that biodynamic farming techniques increase carbon uptake by a very considerable percentage. And it's something I can talk to you about in more details later.
The point that you raise, I'm not sure that I can answer it directly as to why there is no institute currently, but the way that we've been thinking through the structure of an international instrument is to consider the need for some form of high-level guiding body for soil in the world, in a similar context to the Intergovernmental Panel for Climate Change. And in the work that we've done, we've actually developed an approach to that. And if, for example, that type of concept was included in an international instrument, one of its key roles could be to look into this question that you raised. And I'll also make a brief comment on another recent initiative that you may be familiar with, and that is the development of the Global Soil Partnership, which largely came out of the auspices of the FAO, but it was launched in September last year in Rome, and one of its endeavours is also to seek the formation of some high-level global intergovernmental panel. But that type of agency would need to have a very clear mandate and a strong mandate, and it would need to have some form of legislative backing, some legislative recognition at a global level to have any effect.
Sorry,
I think we can answer one more question in the back.
Luke had a comment first.
Okay.
Just a quick one. I also believe that we lack common ground, at least to the extent possible, on the science and the knowledge on soil. Thus, the need for a platform to share what is known. I have called for, and many have called for, the need to have a platform to share information and the science on soil. Some say that the IPBES, the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, should attend to that. Well, this might be the case, but one could also consider that IPCC could do that by providing some information from the climatic lens on soil. But it's not just about the climate, it's not just about biodiversity. That's why I believe that the science and the need to have a platform to share the knowledge and bring therefore all stakeholders from government and all the other players to live up to what is being known and shared is an imperative. Another one is the economics of degradation. If you look at the T you won't see that much in the evaluation of soil degradation, but it is so key. Again, it has been overlooked because we're so used to overlook soil. So I believe that the economics of soil degradation is something that is also needed. Thank you.
We have the last question, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Carlos Valentin. I came from Mexico, and I'm a lawyer. I have 10 years tried to understand the environmental laws that are too much in Mexico, and I want to ask you something. We have in this topic we have 4 legacy documents. One of them is about the production pesticides or agrochemicals in Mexico. Another document is for the protect the forestal or the primary forest. Another legacy document or another law is to take to promote the organisms modified yes, and we have another law who wants to make